Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Will Henshall joining us. Will is the CEO of Metal Men. He's the CEO of Focus at Will Labs. And, fun fact, was the founder and primary songwriter for the UK's hit soul pop act LONDONBEAT back in the late 80s and early 90s. So I am thrilled to introduce Will to you today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrew. That was quite the introduction.
Well, you deserve.
I was thinking to myself, this guy sounds interesting. Who is he talking about?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about you.
Yeah.
And we are going to have so much fun today. Will, I ask all my guests this question. Before we get started, please tell our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
I am an inventor. I am a songwriter, artist, and I am a men's group leader. So I'm a men's leader. I run a men's organization, co-run it with my partner, Ken Rakowski. I am also an entrepreneur. So depending on who I'm talking to, I sometimes start with that. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an artist and an inventor. And I'll tell you why. To be a successful artist, songwriter, you have to be an entrepreneur. To be a successful inventor, I've got half a dozen patents on varying things. You got to be an entrepreneur. You got to understand the business. And to run a successful, men's community, you've also got to be an entrepreneur. So I actually come from, I'm a Brit. I've been living in California for, I've been in the US for 40 years, California for nearly 30 of those. And I come from a family tradition of entrepreneurs, business people. And so it's built into my system. I also come from, on one side of my family, inventors. So, my granddad, my great-grandfather, my father, my brothers, we invent stuff, and it's kind of built in to DNA. So, the dream was always like, I'm going to make a better mousetrap, and we're going to sell it. We're going to make a fortune. My dad still, he goes into a restaurant, he goes, this door handle's the wrong shape. There's a much, but he's drawing it out on a napkin. He can't help it. Yeah. And so my success in the things I've done have all been based in a solid understanding of how value is provided by goods or services. Human beings are very resourceful. And if you go back into history, we've been selling stuff, markets, for thousands of years, right? Yeah. So that's the short version of my story. The other thing I would say, depending on who I'm talking to, is I'm equally left brain and right brain. So I'm a creative and I'm a logic scientist, and that's been a very interesting balance. Which is, how do you balance creativity and science and logic and development of technology at the same time as you're a guitarist, songwriter? And, one of my songs, I've Been Thinking About You, which people will remember depending on how old you are, was one of the biggest songs in the 90s, and it's still played on the radio. It's still one of the most popular songs from the 90s everywhere in the world. It's amazing. Yeah, I can't believe it happened.
Yeah, I reminded myself of "I've Been Thinking About You" for our listeners. I've been thinking about you. That's the tune.
The one.
So that is the one. Well, I loved how this balancing act between being a scientist and an inventor and being a musician. And a creator, those things I've found through the years, I found that those things are much more closely aligned than a lot of people think. So, my performance skills, I grew up in a musical family, right. And a bunch of educators, and that performance experience translated very well into the executive positions that I've held through the years. So the message, you said another really important word, which was value, that you focus in as you're looking at the world around you on the value that you can bring to the table. And a lot of people lose sight of that, and they lose sight of the importance of creativity in their work. So they're really not, it's not to me, it's not an either or. And a lot of people, they convince themselves that it is.
Many of the most successful scientists, Einstein is a super example of this. Einstein was a violinist and a very competent violinist. And when he got stuck on a problem, he'd pick up his violin and he would play very specific, usually Mozart sonatas and a few specific pieces that would help him disconnect his sort of conscious brain and let the problem be solved in the background. And the most talented developers, so I've run development companies as well as doing this. I have another business you mentioned earlier, which is Focus at Will. It's a music service which provides scientifically proven music, unique music. You can't get any of the music on Focus at Will out on the public, other services. And my lead developer in Focus at Will, my business partner, he's called Graham Lias, is incredibly scientifically logic-based. You know, he's almost like if you're sitting at his desk and you move one of his pencils, he can't think straight until the pencil is in the right place, right? He is the most creative developer I've ever met.
Yeah.
He's amazing. I can read code, and when I look at the code he's written, I'm like, this is like Leonardo da Vinci. It's amazing. And other developers who look at his work, they're like, how did you think of that? And the answer is, he's kind of looking up into the top right corner, just like you would when you're writing a song. And he's like going, oh, I wonder, putting his conscious brain out of the way and letting his subconscious solve the problem.
Yeah.
And great business people do the same thing. You must have seen it many times.
Yeah, many
creative
times.
Solution to a problem.
Many times. And the unfortunate thing is I've seen so many executives and leaders convince themselves that they got to focus. They got to be one thing. I can't be multidimensional. And I found that being multidimensional has been one of the most important things for my career success. So, Will, I ask all my guests this question. If you had to pick one event in your life that was just a key accelerant for your career, what would that be?
I've had 7 different careers. I'm being deadly serious.
Yeah.
And so the first one was I came out of school and although I like to play music, I was fascinated with recording studios. If you're watching this video, you see there's a studio I like to work in the background here. And so just the sort of the art and science of how do you put a microphone in front of a vocalist so it sounds great. It doesn't have all those weird sounds on it. How do you mic up a drum kit? And so there was a key moment in that career where I met an engineer who at the time was a successful sound engineer in the UK, and he took me seriously and took me under his wing and taught me a lot about how to do that. And then next thing after I did that was I wrote some songs, and I met a guy called Harvey Goldberg in New York, and he was the live sound engineer for Saturday Night Live. He still is, all these years later.
Wow.
And I was working on a project, and he became a friend of mine, and I said, I've got some songs. I think I can do this. Do you know any vocalists? And he listened to my little songs, just like on a little cassette, and he said, these are great, dude. You should find some singers, a singer. So that got me going, and I met the guys in LONDONBEAT who are American soul singers who were living in London. And then that became a 9-year, I've been thinking about you as the best known one, but there were 4 other big records as well.
Yeah.
And after I did that, I got really interested in recording studio technology. But you didn't think this was going to be a long answer like this. But it's kind of relevant. And the point here is that in my own career, every time I've met someone who's gone, oh, that's an interesting idea. Perhaps you should do that. So I got interested in how do you network recording studios? In the 90s, recording studios had these huge tapes. You've probably seen them on films, movies and things. They're 2-inch tape, these massive machines. It was a very physical-based process where these tape machines are running around. And so if you wanted to go to another studio, you had to take these very heavy tapes and take them somewhere else. And they're also delicate, damaged by magnetism and a few other things. And I met someone who introduced me to Paul Allen, who was the co-founder at Microsoft.
Right.
Paul Allen said, this is a great idea. And I said, thank you. What we're going to do is network recording studios. So you could have a vocalist. You could be singing, Andrew, in New York, and there's an orchestra in Los Angeles, and then there's someone playing in guitar in London. And so Paul backed the company. He put 18 million in, and we raised a ton more money. And it was because of Paul encouraging me. That's why that happened. We sold that company to Avid DigiDesign in 2003.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I think the thread that I'm hearing that runs through it all is really two things. One is relationships and putting yourself out there, which many of us do not do. Right. And then back to that then relates to my mentor, who was put rocket boosters behind my career. And the guy's name is Carl Swayzer. He was my major professor at the University of Iowa in the PhD department there in finance. And he's a very simple statement. He said, Andy, if you're not moving, you're standing still.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing throughout the stories that you're telling is that you're developing relationships and you're keeping moving and you're moving forward. And so many of us, so many of our listeners can really learn from that lesson. Will, let's, before we cut to a commercial break, tell us about Metal Men, METAL.
Right. It's an acronym. It stands for Media, Entertainment, Technology, Artists, and Leaders. If I stand up, you can see my shirt. There it is. There's the logo. Metal is a unique organization. It's like a sort of an edgier version of TED for successful men. And we are a men's group because men are better husbands, better brothers, family relationships, better business partners. We're just better men in the world at large when we are in regular contact with other kind, intelligent, heart-centered men. Metal is not affiliated with any organization. There's no religious, political, we're not part of any media organization. We are an independent group. And the men who are in the community, we tend to be like late 30s upwards. We all have a couple of things in common. We are all entrepreneurial thinking, and we're all positive, actually. We're all positive. Perhaps when we come back, we can talk about a project which we've just completed and finished, which we're very excited about, and which is we did a huge internal research with 450 of our members to see, are there any general principles that successful men have? What are them? And the answer is yes, there are 8 successful principles. By the way, the acronym finishes at leadership, but since we started the organization, we've now got men in medicine, robotics, AI, quantum computers. We're very broad, and we're guys from all over the world. So
I saw that. I was like, okay, how are you going to expand this wonderful acronym that you have?
It would be like a town in Poland that you can't, you can't pronounce properly,
Yeah. So, Will, we're going to take a really short break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about your new book with Ken on masculine intelligence. So we will be right back with Will Henshall. Hey, it's Andy here. I've got a new podcast I'd like to introduce you to, The Saturday Morning Muse. Start your weekend with me by exploring topics that span leadership, business management, education, and other musings that are designed to support your journey of personal and professional continuous improvement. Subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. And we are back with Will Henshall talking about metal men. And let's start the second half of the show with your work, your new book, Masculine Intelligence, 8 Core Principles of the World's Most Successful Men. And Will is holding it up there in the screen for our video-based viewers. Will, tell us about this work. Why is it groundbreaking? What makes it different?
You see a lot of memes online, like 7 proven ways to improve your whatever, 49 different things you didn't know about gardening, right? And these are just made up by marketers. It's nothing that's, based in anything apart from what someone's just trying to get clicks. This came about from a conversation Ken and I had one night, which was, we've noticed that there are some similarities that we all have to be a successful man. Now, how do you determine success? There's a number of ways of doing it. Financially, personally, professionally. We all have a sense of what success is. We all know very rich people who are really unhappy. Now, is that successful?
No.
Right? We all know people who've not got a lot of material success are incredibly happy. Right. So we did a research project with 450 of our members, and we did it with a very long, an 18-page questionnaire with open-ended questions. So it's qualitative research. Only now through AI tools are you able to manage and correlate a huge amount of data like that. Back in the day, this would have been a 1-year project with, a dozen manual researchers trying to put it together.
Right.
And so we asked key questions like, what do you attribute your success to? How did you end up doing that? Talk to us about what's important to you in your health and wellness space. And there's loads of kind of questions. We then put together focus groups and then a long series of one-on-one conversations, all this captured, to see the basic question is, what do you attribute your success to? What are the general principles in your life? And so without too much ado, I'll tell you what they are, and I'd love to ask you about your own experience with these. The first thing we discovered is that we are all curious, right? We're all curious. And by the way, to the women listening to this is entirely relevant to everybody. This is a human thing. Right. We did it as a group of men because we are a group of men, and as I said earlier, we have shown that we're better men out in the world when we meet with other men in the cave. We're all curious. Andrew, I can tell already, I've just talked to you for like half an hour now. You were curious. You're like,
very.
If you get on a plane and they say, put your phone away, are you going to pull out the in-flight magazine and just curiously see if there's anything interesting in it?
Yeah, I'm always looking
right.
at the world around me. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. And then the second principle is creativity. To be a successful man, you have to be curious and you have to be creative, right? So this is like a silly example. I'm opening the in-flight magazine and I see an article on, a new kind of wood that is perfect for, making some furniture in a resort somewhere. I'm making this up. Actually, I'm not. I saw that last week. And then I'm creative. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if I could use that wood to do something else. Could it be, right? So I've found out about something. I'm thinking about what to be creative with. And then the next thing is resilience, right? Success, you've got to be resilient.
Yeah.
The the darkest night of the soul, right? You know, so the dawn comes and it was just, and then integrity. Integrity is another principle. And that means keeping your word, really.
Yeah. My word is my bond.
Absolutely. Be careful about giving your word on something because, and as you get older, you realize that this is much more important than you thought it was in your 20s.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And then brotherhood. All successful men that we talk to in our group understand that you need to have other men who are not random men. And now many of us have friends that you may know, like your kids' friends' fathers. You hang out with them, you see them at a soccer game on a Saturday, or, your neighbors, and you get close to them because you know them, or they're folk you meet at church or other similar organizations. But having guys in your life that are peers in different professions. Like if you're a lawyer, you know a lot of lawyers. If you're a physician, you know a lot of physicians, right? So metal provides this as a fantastic group of guys who get to know you over time and can really help you. They love you. They're not trying to sell you anything. They just want you to be thriving,
Yeah.
That's an important thing.
Yeah. And brotherhood, just pause on that for just a moment. And if, before the show, we talked about that I'm in a band, you've been in bands.
Yeah.
And the band that I'm currently in has been together for 20 years.
Wow.
And, our bass player was a head and neck surgeon. We come from wildly different backgrounds, and the benefit of being in a band, we give back to the community and all of that. But our most favorite time is not on stage; it's in the practice room,
in the rehearsal room. Oh, totally.
In the rehearsal room, and we might be together for 2 hours. Right. And we might play music for 45 minutes of it, but we're connecting and we're brothers, and it's really important. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Yeah, there's something unique about that. Yes. Music. The three international languages. This is a British saying: are music, sex, and football. And by that, they mean soccer.
Yes,
and if you think about it, it's kind of true. Music's first. It depends on where you're at in your life, which one is first, but it's usually music, soccer, and I don't know. Anyway, the next principle from our book.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on, as we were saying. Here's a hole, William. Here's another spade. Try and dig you out, shovel. Pull yourself out of that one.
Right.
Financial literacy is the next thing, which is it's very misunderstood. And what we mean by financial literacy, it doesn't mean that you have to be a whiz at the stocks, shorting things and dealing with, no, it's not about that. This is about understanding how value is provided, how money is an energy, that it is something that gets transferred with goods, services, right? And understanding how you get money, you keep money, and you grow money. Right? How do you provide for other people? How do you, assess risk? Right? There's a lot of stuff around that. Again, it comes back to the balance. One of the things that we are fascinated by with this podcast is talking about this word of balance. Next thing is career development. All successful men have an understanding of you've got to have a mentor. You've got to have coaches. You're always learning. If you're a physician, it is constantly changing. You'll have to really understand new developments, new research, new results, things. Always be learning and understanding that there are some new technologies that have implications that will impact what you're doing, particularly with AI at the moment, right?
Yep.
A good example is if you're a lawyer today, if you were 18 years old today, would you go into law?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it'd be a tough choice.
Right.
And what is it going to mean to be a lawyer in the future?
Right. paralegals today. Right now, there's a tool, paralegal.ai or whatever it's called. I forget the URL, but check it out. It is more accurate than hiring a paralegal for almost anything you're doing. So that's just a good example of, keeping your eye on it. The last one is the most important one for this conversation, which is having a work-life balance. Health, wellness, work-life balance. What does that mean? Well, we live in a point in time where screen time and real life time are increasingly further apart. And what I mean is technology is at an accelerating rate of change. It's getting neck snapping. You log on and Google's now showing me something. I'm like, what?
Right.
And that was just a week ago, And so the accelerating rate of change, the attention that you have to give to things that are happening primarily on the screen is a complete opposite to your real life, where actually we need to slow down. You need to put the phone down at dinner. You need to spend time with your kid. Your kid's only going to be 6 or 7 one time. I have dogs. And what I love about dogs is they don't care. They're all about right now. What's happening right now? And so slowing down just for 15 seconds with your dog and going, what's up, buddy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So understanding how a work-life balance has to be managed. There are certain times when you're starting a business when you have to be dialing in, it's 100-hour weeks for a period, but you can't keep doing that. You'll burn out.
Yep.
You have to get to a point where, okay, you got to hold them or fold them. Is this business worth putting more energy into? Do we need to pivot? What's right or wrong about what we're doing? Right. I can't keep staying in the office until 10 o'clock at night. I'm starting to make bad decisions. And so when we talked to the guys, we found a lot of men said, a lot of younger entrepreneurs and younger people in business don't even know this is a problem.
Yeah.
Right? What about your own life, Andrew? How have you dealt with work-life balance?
Well, I'm going to be sending you a copy of my first book, Balancing Act, as a thank you for this.
Fantastic.
Fascinating. As a thank you for being on the show. And in that book, I tell a lot of personal stories about my own struggles with balance, and that's the times where the wheels are clearly off the tracks and the cars are teetering on the verge of the train being in the ditch, right? And this and allowing, and we are the stack of choices and decisions that we make.
Right.
Yes, we are also influenced by our surroundings and our upbringing, of course. And our situations, but we are the stack of the decisions that we make. And when we are younger, life is coming at us so fast, and we get these kind of false narratives on our heads about what success actually is, and how we should carry ourselves.
Right.
And it is not, and many of those narratives are not long-term sustainable.
Absolutely,
And so one of the mechanisms, and I've told my listeners this before, but one of the mechanisms that I like to use now to remind myself about the need for balance, even at this stage of my life,
right,
is we all brush our teeth in the morning, hopefully, and many of us have electric toothbrushes, and your electric toothbrush, it buzzes every time you're supposed to go to the next quadrant, right? So I stand in front of the mirror and I balance on one foot for the first 30 seconds and then the other for the next 30 seconds. And then I switch back and then I switch back, and I'm done brushing my teeth. And I have been physically practicing my yoga skills and my balance. And it is that physical act of standing on one foot and realizing that after hundreds and hundreds of times of doing it, I'm still wobbly. I am still at risk of falling out and having to catch myself. So use a tool like that. Find something that you can ground yourself in as a reminder, whether it's yoga, some sort of mindfulness practice, breathing, hiking, whatever it is. Get out of all of that rush, get out of all of that compression, and shove the guilt away, because we all feel guilt that we're not there. We're not doing what everybody is expecting us to.
I'm not enough. That old chestnut.
Yep. And just detach. And even at work, when you're with teams, and for our visual listeners, I'm holding up my phone. And I'm sorry, for our audio listeners, holding up my phone. Put this thing away. Turn it off. Go talk to a team without your phone. And you'll be amazed at how present you can you can become just in those moments. So those are just a couple of my tips.
I love the standing on one foot while you're cleaning your teeth. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Hey, Will, we are unfortunately running out of time, but I want to, where can our listeners find this book?
Go to our website, metal.men. That's it, metal.men.
Metal.men.
It's a great URL, great domain, metal.men. You can reach me via the site. You find out a little bit more about what we do. About 20% of our new metal men come through women. And it is usually the wife or girlfriend of an existing metal guy who says to her girlfriend, my husband's in this fantastic group. It's making him a better man. And he goes off on a Saturday to the event, and then he goes and sees all the guys. And she recommends that to her girlfriend, who then has her boyfriend join the site. There's some validation for you right there.
Yeah.
Data-driven.
That's awesome. And so, Will, we're going to end the show, and I feel no qualms at all about going well over time here.
No problem with me.
Because I'm so happy to be talking to you today. But let's do a little lightning round.
Okay.
Tell us about, London Beat, I've been thinking about you, give us just a really, really short version of what was that breakout moment, and when did you and your bandmates know that you'd made it?
There was a distinct moment. The band started in 1987, and we had an album. We had a few hit records locally in the UK and in Europe. We did not have a release in the USA at that stage. And we wrote this song, I've Been Thinking About You. And as soon as the demo was done, and as soon as the master was done, everybody was like, whoa, that's the hit. And we were like, well, it's just another tune we did, dude. We did nothing different. I did nothing different. I did that with other tunes. You tell me how that happened. And what happened was, the song was released everywhere in the world apart from the USA. We were with RCA Records everywhere in the world apart from the USA, where we were with MCA Records.
Sure.
There's a reason why we split that up. And the song had got to number one in 12 or 13 countries. It had got, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Germany, a ton of places. And the song hadn't been released yet in the US. So we flew to New York. We met RCA Records. We did a deal. And they said, son, this is the boss. His name was Al Teller. He's the boss of MCA Records, a famous guy from the music business back in the day. He's a text and he goes, listens to the record. He goes, son, I'm going to make your dreams come true. I was like, okay. Well, what do you mean by that? He goes, you got a #1 record right here. So I was like, okay. So the song was released in the States, got to #2. Got to #2. And we were all like, wow, I got a #2 record in the States. Wow, that's fantastic. Always one of my dreams. And then my manager, who's a woman called Sandra Turnbull, who was also managing the Eurythmics at the time, who were a huge band from back in the day. She said, she calls me Willie. She said, Willie, if you get to #1 next week, everything will change. Everything will change. Because today you can say I got a #2 record in the USA and people go, well, what was #1?
Right.
Right. She said, so if you can get #1, everything will change. And she talked to me. It was late at night in the UK. I had a home in the UK and a home in New York at the time. And it was late at night in the UK. I was in the bathtub, I remember, on my on my 80s phone.
Nice.
And the next morning she called me up. She said, you're going to be #1. We've got the midweeks. She said, everything is going to change right now. And I remember just talking to you, all the hairs on my arms are standing up because that is what happened. Because at that moment, I was able to say, oh, yeah, I've written and played on a #1 selling song in the biggest country in the world. And boom. Then later on, I became a BMI PRS Writer of the Year. And yeah, everything changed in the music business because you, for instance, today know the song.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my calling card.
Yeah. So, Will, let's finish the show with my signature lightning round question. I give you access to a rudimentary time machine. You can send a message to an earlier version of Will Henshall. What's the message? What previous version of yourself do you choose to send it to?
I send it to my 20-something-year-old self and say, don't marry that woman. I can't say anymore.
Oh,
you just know what I mean. Don't marry that woman. Don't do that.
Yeah. I'm fortunately for me, I married that woman, and I'm still married to that woman, and I couldn't be happier. But
I got married again, and I'm incredibly happy with my wife. We have a beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
I would definitely say don't do that. But the truth is, you are a result of all of the decisions you've made. You are the end result of making all these trips and turns. And so I may well be a very different and unhappy person if I hadn't done.
Absolutely. That. We are the accumulation of the stack of decisions that we have made, and we need to keep making decisions and work to make more good than bad.
Yes.
On average.
Yeah. My thoughts entirely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Will Henshall, you have been an absolute joy to get to know. I am thrilled that we got connected.
Yeah.
Anything that we left on the cutting room floor? What did we not say today that we should have?
I really like your sort of ethos about making the world a better place. And there's a spiritual thought talking about leaving golden footsteps. So everywhere you've been in life, you make it better than it was before. And the reason why I'm so involved in men's work is that by successful men being in a group like this, what happens is there's a sort of a rising tide floats all boat. And so a lot of bad behavior that goes on in the world by men, not metal men, but just men out there, is often because of ignorance and lack of awareness by those men, right?
Yeah. And
so we in the Metal Men group, we call each other out on things. We are like, dude, is that, did you notice that you were standing too close to that girl and she was uncomfortable, Right. And a guy is like, I never really even noticed I'm doing that, right? So I think having other good men around you is a really important part of success and leaving the world a better place.
Yeah. Well, Will, thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it.
I loved doing the interview, and it's a pleasure to talk to you, Andrew.
All right. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services, as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share today's very, very impactful episode with your friends, colleagues, and neighbors. Today's show was produced by Nicholas Temte. We'll see you next time on The Balancing Act.